Hello, welcome to We Are Wavemakers, and today's topic is about content marketing, specifically about creating with the creative, how to find the one. Nas, have you found your one?
My one creative person. Oh man, I have to say I found so many the ones.
Oh wow, we're talking about okay. And how has it been the process of like working with creatives, because as marketers, one of the things that we need all the time is to collaborate with people like graphic designers, video creators, photographers, in order for them to actualize our ideas.
Yeah.
And how has your experience been so far in this process?
I think like as an agency, we definitely we're constantly working with designers, videographers, and things like that. And the reason we're talking about this today, I think it really has a lot to do with the fact that sometimes on the client front, clients don't understand a lot of things when it comes to conceptualizing the creation part. And when we talk about this particular episode, we want to talk to the one who knows how to structure the conceptualization of the creative content that comes out of it. And I believe there is a method to the madness.
Yes.
And the genius that comes with it. And today's guest is supposed to give us that insight, right?
Absolutely. It's very exciting because we live in times where there are like various channels, and we deal with clients every day who are just constantly on the lookout for that one content that is just going to engage, and it's getting more and more challenging to create.
Yeah.
And the creatives are really there for us to make it happen, to help see the idea from A to Z and to make it relatable to our audience. And so on this episode, we'll be speaking to a creative and communication director, Natalie Kutia, from Off Festival, one of the world's largest design festivals. Natalie basically works with studios to create fantastic content, and she also has a way of streamlining the process in order to get the maximum results. With that, welcome, Natalie, to today's show.
Hi, Natalie.
Thank you so much for having me. This is pretty exciting. My name is Natalie. I am based in Barcelona, but I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia, and I studied in Lebanon, Beirut. So I've been pretty much around the world. So I began my career in graphic design. I have a degree in graphic design, but then my passion in communication and my passion in writing led me actually to my current job at Off. So yeah, right now at Off, I basically take care of the communication. I'm the communications director. I'm also the social media manager and the speaker's PR. So yeah, and it's funny, like people keep asking me, what is your dream job, or what would you like to do differently right now? And I keep saying repeatedly that, Off has always been my dream job. And I'm so happy that,
It's pretty dreamy. Yeah.
yeah, like I'm very, I cannot be more grateful, and it's an amazing journey, and I always advise everyone to experience that journey. So yeah, this is kind of like a resume about me.
Yeah, great. I mean, so happy to hear that. And you say that you work with a team as a communications director. Maybe you can sort of let us know, when it comes to communicating your idea to your creative team, do you have a process, and how's the working relationship like with your team?
So the way we work at Off is very unique. We use a very unique approach. So when we have a certain idea to communicate to studios or to the team in general, we give the absolute freedom to execute the idea, as long as it follows a certain standard of communication, of course. So in the beginning, we communicate the mission, what we would like to, our goal. And then we share some few insights, but without building expectations. Why? Because this would help the team to thrive more and to think more. And in the end, it's all about building the conversation with them, and this will allow room for this idea to develop.
And how do you ensure that they stick to that mission, and what are some of the key information that you would have, say, in a creative brief? Do you guys use creative brief, or is it more like sit together, discuss, okay, let's meet again in 2 days and then we'll figure it out? How does that work?
So, what's also unique about this approach that we use is that we never provide a strict brief to follow. We always have an open brief. And to be honest, ever since I learned the concept of the golden circle by Simon Sinek, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, or Sinek, sorry, I don't know, either one. I learned this concept back in the university, and I use it in my work, and we always apply it in our conversation with everyone, which is you have to understand the why, the how, and the what in the brief in order to communicate the idea very well. So using that, we're helping the team or the client understand the motives and decide the right tools to communicate. And of course, focus on what it is you want to communicate. So it's true, it's an open brief, but we have some kind of guidelines to follow.
Would you say, does this apply to visual design, or can it apply as well to, say, a writer's creative process? What do you reckon on that? I mean, because you do social media, so I assume when you create your concept of communication, there would be written work inside there. So would you say it applies, this method?
Yes, of course. It applies on all three aspects, because in the end, you have to focus on your audience and you have to focus on whom you're communicating this idea to. We follow the same approach with all three aspects.
Yeah, we 100% agree with that kind of creative method, because one of the things we definitely see is the why, the how, and what is it translates better than without it when it comes to visual creations. And I mean, like, we've seen this happen for time and time again for creative work that doesn't address those three questions, and it becomes completely lost, the message, and sometimes even the call to action isn't 100% clear. So that's why we were talking about this entire episode is about finding the one. The one is what you just defined. So that's really cool.
Yep. And so when it comes to, say, finding the right creative person to execute your ideas, how do you find these people? Do you outsource them, or is there a platform that you use to find them, or is it based on your personal network? Or maybe you go on social media and you look at their Instagram accounts and you're like, oh, I love this guy's work, let's collaborate. Like, how do you find, the best creative person?
What is the best creative person? I think I want to know.
So first of all, there's no best creative person. Thanks to over 20 years of experience, OFF has been happening for the past 20 years. And it's been the biggest platform of creative artists and talent. So we have built this amazing community of speakers, artists, and creative attendees, and that keeps growing and growing. So, of course, we stumble upon creative work every day. But at the same time, we tend to search for the people behind this work. Like, we tend to search for these people that are not really known for it. Like, you see work done for Apple, you see work done for, big companies, let's say. So we tend to search for these amazing artists behind it, that are behind their computers and trying to do technical things, on the visual stuff. Besides that, we also receive like over thousands of requests every day from talents around the world. So we're very thankful for that. And we have access, to this amazing list of people contacting us every day and trying to showcase their work. Besides all of that, we also use the help of our speakers that have been, at OFF in the past years. They always recommend us other talents. So, yeah.
Would you say fundamentally you have sort of like a core type of speakers or, artists that you sort of want to showcase at OFF, for example? Is there a type, or do you go for annual themes? How does that work usually when you find these talents and want to, put them out there?
So yeah, like I said, like we never really look for the right person or the right speaker. In fact, we we always make sure to invite new people, new artists. And of course, that comes with a consequence because some of these artists have never done a speech before. So when they come to off and when they give the talk, it's, it might be positive or negative. So we always take the risk. So we never really look for any certain expectations in the artist. And we just when we look for artists and when we decide which speaker should give a talk, we just kind of understand if the content of this speaker or the material that this speaker will provide will be helpful and inspiring for our audience.
That's super important. Say, for example, like the big companies that you're finding through, say, Apple, for example, the guys behind the work, surely there was a message that resonated with you guys that made that person, I would say, I don't know, make the cut or almost be worth sharing their method to
I guess
madness.
aligning in terms of brand values.
Do you have a way of it? Like, I guess what we're trying to get at is like, sometimes when it comes to selecting, say, for example, a creative person for a particular client brief, a lot of times we meet a lot of our clients who aren't sure who to work with per se in the creative field, and say prices may be different. But in the case of off, obviously it's about curating a series of talents, right? But like, do you think there's a need for us to have a little bit of what kind of recognition should be worth it? Is it like how you apply the fundamentals of like, that they know the whys, the hows, and the whats? Does that matter in the case of, I know in off it's kind of like a lot, but I guess what we're trying to say is like when it comes to the talent as a whole, do you seek that when you guys try to find the recommendations that you get?
It kind of depends because, besides the festival, besides curating the lineup, we also have the book that we work on every year. So I would say, like, of course, in the case of the speakers, I would say it's very open and we always take the risk in that. I mean, we take risks in general, but I guess when it comes to the book, for example, like such a big publication, we do somehow try to find certain qualifications in order to work on the book, whether it's an editorial company or a design company. So yeah, in that case, I would say like, yeah, of course, we tend to look for the right person here. And yeah, I guess that I hope that, answers more or less your question.
And does that apply as well for, say, your academy? You guys, did you just launch an academy?
Off Academy?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the highlights also that we were working on right now. We launched, I mean, the Off Academy is like your new creative playground. We would not call it like your education playground. It's more like this fun experimental project that we're working on. So we launched it last April, and the Off Academy will have many projects under it. But one of the amazing projects we're working on right now is the Off Mentorship, powered by Adobe. So we teamed up with Adobe to offer this amazing opportunity to young people from the age of 18 to 26 years old. Basically, the mentorship has 4 modules, which is video, 3D, graphic design, and film. Yeah, so we're giving this opportunity to young people to pursue their career or even build their career. This is one of the projects we're doing under Off Academy, and hopefully next year we will be announcing new things regarding that.
That's very exciting. And so bringing it back to the concept of audience, you talked about how besides knowing your why, what, and your how, the circle, it's also important to create with having the audience in mind. And with that, how do you decide on the best channel to get your message out there when it comes to content creation? Are you listening to the audience? Do you know what they're saying? Is there some sort of analysis going on? Are you social listening? And so, yeah.
With all the changes that we're encountering right now with social channels, and I'm kind of talking here about the algorithms and how, that changed over the past years. And it's becoming really challenging to spread your content out there and to make sure, like it's been seeing and it's being heard. So when we work on a creative brief or when we work on a certain project, it's very important for us to consider the social channels and the mediums that we will be using while working on the content, because each social channel has its specific audience, its specific requirement. Some channels videos work better, and other channels photos work better. So of course we use social media as our main channels, but besides that we have the typical way of communication, which is through our newsletter and through our contacts. And besides that, I definitely recommend Behance, which is this amazing platform by Adobe, that really helps spread creative work among the creative community. And using Behance, like regardless of how famous you are or how many followers you have, in the end, your work is going to be spread and your work is going to speak about yourself. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this amazing platform for all the creative people that are either starting or that are, already in their career, advanced in their career.
And would you say that, you work with a lot of creatives? Is it true that they only care about designing, or do they now start to consider the fact of target audience? Are they able to switch their hats to a more marketing mindset, or are they just, no, I don't care. I just want to do beautiful creative things and who cares, How does that work?
Yeah, we've been always against that idea of focusing only on design, and obviously there's been so many contradiction about that. Like, what is design the best method to spread the word? Or there's been so many conversations about that. But of course, I mean, we're talking about visual communication here, and you need to learn how to communicate your message through your work. But it's very important to know whom you're spreading this message to, especially because we're dealing with a very challenging generation right now. That you need to learn how to convince these people through your work. So, in my opinion, of course, understanding the target audience is very essential in every project, because you could have an amazing design idea, you could have gorgeous work, you could have like these amazing talented techniques, but if you fail to convince your audience, then the point here can also get lost. You have to focus on who do you want to attract and what do you want to get out of them. So understanding the audience helps resolve these main questions in every brief.
Yeah, I was going to take it to your academy and ask you, will your mentorship program be helping the youth, understand that? Because I think like, in the Gen Z, I think your age group is around Gen Z, and a little bit of the millennials, but mainly the Gen Zs. How do we intend to educate them with what you just said? It's going to be interesting. And I'm wondering, will the mentorship have that part that they need to know about the audience, essentially?
I have to say, it all started since the beginning. So when you go to register for the mentorship, before we select the winners, one of the main things we wanted to focus on is the description of the idea, because you have to go to the website, write the description of the idea that you would like to work on with your mentor. And there was no place to add or attach any design or any visual. So I think that was like one of the main things that we wanted to focus on. Like, we wanted to make sure that you know how to communicate your idea. Are you going to convince us to see if this idea is potential or not without using any visual to help with the idea? Of course, it's important to check the portfolio of each candidate, just to understand how advanced they are, or like just to understand their visual background. But it all started there, and then once they begin their mentorship, they will also like understand that it's not all about designing. It's about the communication between them and the mentor, because the mentor is also, I mean, they have to have conversations between each other every month. Again, it's all communication, and it's all about understanding why this is right or this is wrong, or how can you make this better. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I think it's really important that we sort of remind, I mean, because like we have experience, like Rachel and I have, in Asia specifically, to having taught younger children in the communications field, whether it was public speaking or through theater and things like that. And one of the things that we've learned thus far is, due to the digital world, communications is different from how it used to be, where, you know, we would usually just send an emoji to say how we feel. I mean, back then that wouldn't exist, right? But it's evolving. And I mean, it's kind of interesting to see, you know, I'm curious to know what the creative world will create in the next 20, 30 years, because I feel like it's evolving, and that there's sometimes, to me, less words and just sometimes more visuals, but not necessarily clear understanding. But at the same time, there is depth. Like, I mean, I've seen some amazing memes where they just use visuals, and that's creative to me as well. But, and I'm not talking of, I mean, it's obviously not like design thinking per se, but it's still clever. And I mean, when we're talking about content marketing as a whole, I think the young designers, it's really interesting to see how they're going to translate their communications. And it's great that academies like yours are actually supporting them towards understanding that it is still about talking to the audience and not just talking to yourself. Yeah.
And so let's talk about content. And how do you know when a content is relevant before you launch a campaign? And do you have a recipe for successful content?
This all like brings us back to, you know, that you have to understand your audience and whom you're speaking to. I think this is the first important step to take when you create the content. So, of course, besides the quality of the work you're doing, in the end, you are working on visual communication, and you need to work on what attracts your audience in order to have successful results. So in the end, you know, like the content is definitely relevant to the audience you're working for or you're communicating to.
Right. So that's always the benchmark, just ensuring how the receivers digest
The
the
information.
creative work,
Yeah.
basically. Okay. And what about viral content? What do you think about that? And is there a proven strategy to that at your world over there?
I mean,
No,
I
you don't have to
say-
answer it if it's too tough or
Oh,
too
no,
controversial.
It's not tough. It's just about, like, I have to say, there's been so many controversy regarding this topic because we live in such a strange world right now where it's becoming super complicated to get the right attention. I mean, we live in a world where Kylie Jenner's 1 second video of her saying "rise and shine" to her kid goes viral. And that really, I mean, I don't know if you've seen that, but, you know, of course, this clearly proves to you that the perfect strategy does not exist. Because, you know, for us people who work in social media, it frustrates us, you know, because, you know, we have our basic research, we have our basic experience on how to get things done. But this just teaches you that social media is a never-ending learning experience because there's so many changes happening in such a short time. So when you see things like this breaking the internet, of course you get frustrated, but at the same time you learn something out of it, you know? So
It's almost like a breakthrough. Like
I
the
know.
more you can prove that this is super out there, the more viral it gets because it shocks people
Yeah.
from their, comfort minds, basically.
So I guess we would like to. I mean, so would you say you were saying something about the only thing like with viral content you wanted to say was?
Yeah, so like my only advice is to learn from everything around you in order to create a good strategy for your work. The perfect strategy may not exist, and I have always believed that your work speaks for itself. So definitely focus on that.
Beautiful.
Okay, that's really good advice.
Yeah.
I think it's super helpful for our listeners in this part.
Yeah, agreed. Well, one more question then before we wrap up, I think.
Yeah.
Have you ever come across a creative who doesn't align with your vision, mission, and values? And if that happens, how do you find that middle ground when working together?
So,
or
this
do you
is
even
the-
work with them? Maybe you don't.
Okay. So this is one risk we accept to take when we offer open briefs to a creative team or to a specific studio, because in the end, we've always adored the unexpected. So eventually, if we need to get involved in order to guide them to go on the right path, then of course we do it. I mean, we have to make sure that we are creating a clear understanding between us and the creative team in order to achieve great results. You need to make sure that they understand your brand's value more than anything. So a lot of research has got to be made beforehand, while assuring there's freedom in producing the work.
Do you think there's a lot of research that isn't conducted sometimes when you mean like that there is that correlation of lack of research means it's not aligned? Like, does that happen?
Yeah, it happened in the past because, like we've had some experiences where off is not being understood well, because, it's not your typical conference, it's not your typical event, it's not your typical way of work, so there has been some lack in the past. That's why it's important for them to understand, our values and how off has been, well, the value, I mean, yeah, the value behind the brand and how we work in general.
So it's like, be creative and I guess really know the audience. I mean, I think when it comes to the creative world, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it's about being flexible and open, but at the same time knowing that art needs to be communicated. It's not there for no reason. It's there for a reason. And for any aspiring creative, whatever they create, they should be knowing that they are communicating to someone. Whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people, that's entirely up to them to decide, right?
Of course, yeah, I totally agree. We live in such a visual world right now. So most of us have very certain attention to use. You know what I mean? Like, you have to use these seconds of attention. You have to understand what this viewer is going to think in a matter of seconds. So that's why I said this is a very objective question, because you could look at art, or you could look at a piece of art that does not have meaning behind it and still love it and still want it and still want to look at it and have it, it creates this kind of feeling between yourself and the piece itself. And at the same time, when we work on the book, or when we create posters or anything, sometimes, yeah, you need to have a meaning behind it, because like I said, you have what this viewer is going to think in a matter of seconds. Like, is this worth it or is it not worth it? So yeah.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Natalie. I think we've had a lot of insights on how to find the one today, and
the creative one.
The creative one, and we really appreciate your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been super fun, and I love the questions because it really tackles things that are very complicated to talk about these days. So yeah, thank you.
It is. I mean, we live in such a, in a generation where content is just so saturated, and these questions are important because it's getting pretty complicated out there in terms of, content marketing and how people create, how people perceive. And so we're very happy to have you on this discussion. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was really exciting. I really enjoyed the conversation with Natalie. How do you feel, Nas?
So I think it was a really interesting take on the creative side because, someone like Natalie is part of this massive festival that is for creatives who truly understands that in the end, it is still about talking to the audience, really resonates with a marketer like myself, because we agree that, you and I agree at least, that it is so important, whether you're writing or whether you're creating a visual
painting a portrait,
a video. Like it really does matter. Like who are you talking to? Why? What are you trying to say? Because I guess, yes, you can create just cause, but at the same time, it's like, even if you want to create just cause, if there's no reason for it, then, just expect that there will be no response to it, you know? But at the same time, on the other end, I really admire the fact that she, the way she brings in her creatives is also through open briefs. And that's super important too, because you don't want to limit creativity, right? You can't limit creativity because otherwise then you're not creative anymore. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like you're boxed up, right?
Yeah, but she also gives sort of responsibility with that open brief where she talked about the golden circle, which is very much in line with what we do with our clients as well. Knowing your why, guys, I mean, it's everything. If you don't have the base into why you're creating, who you're creating for, then everything else will always be unstable. And so in order to know why you're creating, you kind of need to take a step back and think about it and to reflect. And so she talked a lot about research as well, which is, we thrive on research. I mean, you can pick things out of thin air, but at the end, it's also about relevance. And so being resourceful, understanding not just how you think, but how others think. And so it's almost like having empathy into the audience and being able to understand the different emotions it creates.
I mean, in this day and age, the creative genius should have a high emotional intelligence, meaning knowing what resonates with the existing human mind. And, I think we've evolved our human mind, and how we respond to content is not like how it used to be, say, 100 years ago, know, or back in the 50s, where, the box of the content, the creativity that came from the ad agencies like you see on Mad Men were different, how women were viewed versus today, right? It would be totally off-putting if we saw something like, the character of a woman is expected to just be the kitchen lady, the mother or who cooks and things like that. That doesn't apply anymore. And so the beauty about creativity, the creative world, is that it evolves with history and time. And
and one needs to adapt according to that change in order to be relevant, in order to continue progressing. And so, that being said, does that mean we live in a time where it's hard to find the one?
I would say to find the one is to find the one that wants to evolve.
Wow, that's profound. I mean, it's like
think so?
Finding prototypes, doing your background research, and at the same time allowing that space and time to align and to see whether you can work together, meet each other halfway, and if you can't, then moving on, right?
I mean, for every creative in like every in our industry, especially, like what we need to understand is, if you are interested in the world of graphics or videos or even writing, especially when you're doing marketing, it really is about getting with the times. Just get with the times, focus on, current issues, be open to receiving information from multiple areas. And, the beauty about that is your mind gets even more creative. And
where do you draw the line in that then? Because the world is your oyster pretty much. So that, I think it empowers the creative. Like, it's no longer just about trying to fit in or like being insecure about your work, but it's just, allowing your work to speak for itself, just like what she said. And I think that is power in the creative itself, to not just be chosen, but to choose, who you want to work with.
And I guess like my last thing to say is, like, for any agency or any client who is looking for a creative, because we're supposed to find the one, we should always remember not to limit their creativity.
Definitely. And also know your why, right?
And when you look for them, try to figure out if they know their why and you know your why. You know what I mean? Like,
and don't put it on them if you don't know your why.
100%. Like, that's super important. With that, I think that wraps up our episode. And I just think if you want to know more, you've got to like subscribe to our channel via YouTube and Spotify and every other channel that we are on. Stay tuned for the next episode. My name is Nazira.
And my name is Rachel Lai, and we are Wavemakers. Thanks for tuning in. We're recording live from Genesis Creative Center on the Island of Gods, Bali.